We would like to introduce you to Craig Anderson, who is the 2009 Teacher of the Year for the Galt High School District. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us where you teach and what you teach.
Well, I teach at Galt High School, and I teach chemistry and forensic science, and I'm the department chair there, graduate of 1972, go Warriors. So my children went to school there, and so it's like a reunion every day at Galt High School.
Well, tell us about your program. That sounds really interesting, chemistry and forensic science. There seems to be a big interest in that area.
What I have, as far as the forensic science, I have it designed as a senior class to try to create interest in other areas of science that typically in a normal high school program you don't have time really to really delve into, whereas if in biology they can take a few days to work with microscopy, we can use the microscopes for as long as we want. We've got a partnership with San Joaquin Delta College, their electron microscopy lab, where we actually go down for a day with my forensic students, and they actually teach them how to prepare samples and actually use the electron microscopes, which is kind of a thrill for all of us. So we look at a lot of different kinds of science, and I'm not really so much looking at turning out a whole class or two of CSIs every year, but they're able to look at other options in science that don't get covered in a normal course of study.
Well, tell us about, as working with these students, is it easy to motivate students who have an interest in that type of field, or even do you still find it challenging to really get kids pumped up about these subjects?
Oh, well, seniors are always very motivated students, especially towards the end of the year. So that's sometimes having all seniors in the class. I have that way for, a lot of it has kind of a mature nature to it as far as crime. But that can be the challenge as far as really keeping them on task, that okay, this is a serious science class and you're actually going to have to do work. We're not going to be watching CSI every day. It doesn't happen. So so as long as they kind of kick into the idea that they're going to have to work in the class, it's a really good lab experience.
And does your class kind of dispel any rumors or myths that they see on television where you tell them, well, that really wouldn't happen?
Well, we have, in talking with local, we'll bring in local law enforcement, and I have my experiences of conversations and relationships I've had with talking to the actual people who work in crime labs, that what's real, what's not. And I think they find that interesting. Some things are realistic, but the whole thing where, the one person goes out and interviews the wrongdoer and does everything. Usually it's the high-paid scientist is going to stay in the lab, and lesser paid people are going to go out and be following directions as far as lifting prints or whatever off a door jamb. So I think they find that interesting as well, that the reality, what is the reality compared to television.
Well, how long have you been teaching now?
Overall teaching, this is my 18th year. I was 4 years at Tracy High School before I was able to get back on with Galt High School. It was a midlife sort of thing. I'm an unlikely science teacher. I dropped out of school when I was a senior at UC Davis and got married. And my wife and I had kids, and I worked in construction for 15 years. And I've totally been inspired by my wife, who's always knew she wanted to be an elementary school teacher from when she was 7 years old, and some of that rubbed off on me, and I realized I wanted a job with more meaning and more, more meaning to what you're spending your time doing, that you're really doing some good rather than just spending time.
Well, in the time that you have been a teacher, what have you seen change in education, whether it's in the classroom with the students, or what you've had to do to change as a teacher?
I haven't seen as much change as I think sometimes people outside of education assume there has been. kids are still generally pretty good. You know, I mean, and maybe we're just blessed at, you know, where we're at Galt High School and in the kind of semi-rural atmosphere we've got, that we've just got a lot of good kids, and they're fun. And that hasn't really changed. I don't think, you know, that teenagers have gotten, you know, so bad or anything. Some things have changed, but you know, as far as computers and some of the technology, but really my teaching hasn't changed. I hope I've gotten better, but what you do day to day, the tools change sometimes, but how I do it, you know, having a sense of humor about yourself and what you do, and then trying to enjoy yourself, and therefore the kids enjoy themselves, that hasn't changed.
What about as far as a teacher itself, being a teacher, what, you know, different rules, different things over the years that have kind of created maybe some more challenges for you in the classroom?
Well, I think a challenge generally has been as far as the emphasis on test scores and so on. I mean, this is do or die sort of thing with schools. I mean, we've been through ups and downs at Galt High School, and we're way up. You know, we've been our scores have been way up lately, but there was a point where they were low, and this was a really big deal. But I take it as more of a challenge. You know, usually there's kind of a lot of grousing about it, but I think it helps the way I teach that there are certain standards that I need to cover, especially when you're in a little town like Galt. I want to have my students go away having been exposed, having learned the same things that all the rest of the high school kids in California have. I don't want them to just go away with what I found interesting. So I think that's, even though, you know, for the most part, as far as testing and scores, that's looked upon as, you know, being a bad thing, maybe, you know, for my teaching, I think it's been helpful. That kind of really does guide me in how I change things. And it makes more of a challenge. I change things up from year to year. Mm-hmm. You know, if you did the same thing over and over and over, you'd be so bored. And really, there's no reason to be bored. Teaching every day is an adventure.
No, you had mentioned that your wife kind of inspired you.
Absolutely.
Tell me more about that.
Well, we met at San Joaquin Delta College at an early morning speech class. And this lovely young woman, I knew she would never go out with me, but we both, by chance, ended up coming to class early. It was the first class of the day. We both come early so that we could beat the traffic. And so we both, you know, and there wasn't really a whole lot of traffic at 7 o'clock in the morning. But fairly soon we started dating, and you know, so then I still had a couple of years. I went to Davis, she stayed at UOP, and that was tough. So being apart, so one thing led to another. As far as my schooling, I dropped out, got a job. We got married a couple of years later and have 2 grown sons, two blood grandchildren, and a couple grandchildren from our goddaughter. So that's right now. She has spent most of her career being a 7th or 8th grade teacher in a small K through 8 school, Oakview School, out in northern San Joaquin County, and she's now the vice principal. So she's always been, I've looked at, you know, when I was working in other jobs, I always admired her dedication and her hard work, and how her kids really admired her and loved her, and she loved them.
Well, what would you say to those people out there who are considering teaching as a profession? What would you say to convince them to look at it seriously?
I mean, I feel like if you like kids, there's a lot of quote-unquote teachers out there who don't seem to like kids for some reason. Why are you in this business? You need to like kids. You need to have a sense of humor about yourself. If you have a ton of patience, if you're an optimist, do it. You've got to go after it. Sometimes it helps, like myself, to be, if you're student teaching and you're not getting any income, you've got to make it. And I was thinking, gee, I don't know if this is going to work out, this teaching thing. So, I mean, you don't know. Sometimes you just have to take the chance. I mean, certainly I have had many different jobs, and there's never been a job that I've worked harder at, and there's never been a job that I've enjoyed half as much as I do teaching. And it really is more than a job. It's more than a career. It's what you become. I'll always be a teacher.
Okay, well,
even
thank
if
you.
I retire.
Even then. Well, thank you for your time. We've been speaking with Craig Anderson, who is the 2009 Teacher of the Year for the Galt High School District. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.